Hello again. Okay, so September 17th, 1949. Warner Brothers released The Fast and the Furious, the first Roadrunner cartoon. Of course, Roadrunner cartoons and Wile E. Coyote especially popularized the use of Acme gadgets. Now, Chuck Jones told why he did this. Basically, Acme was his stick. And he described this in an interview at one point. Kids playing, you need a gun, you use a stick. You need a sword, you use a stick. Growing up, sticks were your universal toy. You could use them for anything. And Acme was a popular name. So he needed a corporation, Acme, because it existed so much. There were a lot of places. I've seen some places claim over 100, but it was like one of the most popular names for a business. Now that said, it was not. Well, how did this come about? One, it begins with an A, and so if you want to be the first listed in the phone book or whatever other list, Acme works. And it's Greek for summit or pinnacle or peak, so it's Acme. It's a good thing. We're the top at what we do. So that's how it became so popular, and as a result of its popularity, Chuck Jones started using it. Now that said, there was no Acme as such. It was always Acme product name. So, Acme heating and air conditioning, Acme whatever. There was no one Acme. There was an Acme United Corporation. This was formed, let's see, 1867. It was made into a partnership. 1873, it was officially recognized by the state of, or officially incorporated in Connecticut. They grew to an international company. They had offices or factories in Canada, Germany, Hong Kong, and China. So it was fairly big. I think they still exist. Again, they specialized. They made cutting tools, measuring tools, and safety equipment. Okay, there was actually Acme Markets would be the next most broad that I could find, and again, it was, I believe they were a grocery chain, so it wasn't the generic Acme Corporation we see in the cartoons today. And there was actually an Acme Anvil company, but I couldn't find when they were created. Now, again, this would have been the way Chuck Jones saw it when he created these, most likely. It wasn't Acme Corporation buy anything from us. It was Acme Rocket Roller Skates. It's one company, it specializes in rocket roller skates. Acme Giant Slingshot. One company specializes in giant slingshots. And that is the way it appears in the earlier cartoons, as not one big company named Acme, but as a bunch of smaller companies, each specializing in whatever Wile E. Coyote wanted at the time. Somewhere along the lines, this changed, and people started viewing it as one big corporation. Also, somewhere along these lines, it became unpopular. Largely, some people say specifically because of the Roadrunner cartoons, because the Coyote keeps buying all these products which don't work the way he wants to use them. And again, because it is a specific, this is the Rocket Roller Skate company, we're assuming he's using it somewhat correctly. It's not, he bought a bunch of stuff and then misused it. So the problem isn't with his attempt to use it. The problem is with the product itself. So Acme got a bad reputation. I couldn't really find out when this happened, but people stopped calling their corporations Acme, although some of them still exist. I believe the Acme United still exists, I think. Now, Chuck Jones wasn't the only one doing this. In fact, before he did it, Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd used Acme as product names in some of their movies. Um, Donald Duck cartoons, Pink Panther cartoons, some of them had Acme products in them. Continued even up into sitcoms. The 60s TV, I Love Lucy, and Andy Griffith Show had Acme products in them. So it wasn't completely, I don't know, vilified is the wrong word, unpopularized by this time. But eventually it did become, you know, people did stop calling their products Acme or new companies Acme. Then we jump to the 1970s. 1978 through 1981, there was a lawsuit between Apple Corporation or Apple Corps and Apple Computers. Apple Corps, the Beatles named their, basically they consolidated their stuff under one name. And the big deal was trademark infringement. You called your computer company Apple, we already had the name, we want to sue. Because there can only be one Apple. Now, when did this come about? I couldn't find when this came about, but we went from anything can be Acme as long as you put another tag on it, you know. Acme paintbrushes. I could create my own company. And no other Acme would sue me because it's specifically paintbrushes. Whereas Apple Corporation is generic, Apple Computer is specific, but still, we can only have one Apple. That's the new paradigm. So they tried to sue, and the court said, no, not going to do, nah, you know, one's obviously music, one's obviously computers, are two completely different things. Until 1986 through 1989, there was another lawsuit because we had the MIDI files were created and we could do other audio stuff with computers. So Apple Corps came back and said, you're doing music now. And this time there was a payoff. I forget how much. Then 2003 to 2007 it comes up again because iTunes were created. And so people are now downloading music, and so computers are more music related. And Apple Corps comes around and says, look, you're violating the original 1981 agreement. And this time the judge turned around and said, no, they aren't. But part of the settlement, Apple Computer now, it used to be Apple, well, it's Apple Inc. now, it used to be Apple Computer, turned around and said, let's just buy the name. So $500 million, they bought the name from Apple Corps. Part of the agreement is we will license it to you so you can continue to call yourself Apple Corps. But, you know, this way, now, no matter how much Apple Computer expands, they can continue to use Apple and not be sued for it in the future. My point to bringing that up is, again, we went from you can call anything Acme you want to you can only call one thing Apple. And so that goes into our looking at Acme over time. Like I said, people who watched the original cartoons would have seen Acme Rocket Roller Skates and Acme Giant Slingshot and said, oh, these are two different companies. Whereas when I was growing up, Acme was one corporation. Everyone just assumed that. Within the Warner Brothers franchise, they did start using Acme as one corporation instead of being a bunch of small ones. And that's sort of how the society's gone now. That we want to complain about big corporations, but at the same time, the convenience of buying everything at one place, we're actually willing to give up quality of goods for the convenience of one-stop shopping. And so, as much as we want to complain about corporations, we are at the same time supporting them because it's convenient for us. And so, modern day shopping is going from one negative Acme to another negative Acme to some extent. Mega corporations producing multiple cheap goods, which is sort of why, like I said, the originally named Acme started to become less and less used because people are watching Roadrunner cartoons and saying, look, this stuff they make doesn't work. So, yes, Acme means summit or peak. It's supposedly a good sounding name. It begins with an A, so it starts at the beginning, but people have this negative association with it. So people stopped using it, and we started looking at it as a giant corporation as opposed to a bunch of small corporations each, or a bunch of small businesses each selling its own thing. So as much as we want to talk about, oh, we want to go back to mom and pop businesses instead of the large corporation, our Acme view, we don't do that. We want to go with the large Acme corporation instead of seeing Acme as being multiple small corporations. That's it. Like I said, Acme, it wasn't the one big corporation in the beginning, but most people don't know that, especially people born in my age or even a little older than me. By the time, it came down to there was one Acme corporation because that's the way we view the world. No matter, even if we want to complain about, big businesses, we still view the world in that sense. That's it. Have a nice day.